Hi everyone, we've got something a little bit different because there's cameras now.
We can see everybody.
Yeah.
I know, it's not just a podcast, it's a vidcast.
We used to do video and then we stopped and then we never got it back. So yeah, hope maybe one day the
There you go.
channel's still there. But yeah, I'm joined by Will Shick.
Yeah, hello, sir.
Yeah, long time listener of fan.
That's true. I've been listening for a while, but this is my first appearance. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, well, we are excited to have you. Unfortunately, Alan can't be here because he's currently winning games of Legion. So
Yeah,
don't make me a liar.
unfortunately, he might become the world champion. That would be terrible for him.
But I think so. Alan's worst enemy is himself. He's playing Tempest again.
Yeah.
It's really hypey and wants to just charge his HSCs. He knows. We have this conversation after every event.
True.
And yeah, just don't move him into range. Don't sweep a cell and it's fine.
So far, he seems to be resisting the bloodthirsty urge to charge with his heavy armor. So
Yeah, he's doing good. So we're going to just go over. We don't have too long, so I'm going to try and get you and Pagani on to the podcast itself.
absolutely, we'd love to. I'll drag him on. I'd love to be on again.
Yeah, I'm aiming to try and wait for maybe the 16th of April, 17th of April, somewhere.
There you go. That's a good time. Good timing. Good timing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time.
Yeah. Did you have fun last night?
I did. It's always a blast to get the opportunity. You know, I'm blessed that I get to be the one to go up and present all the studio's hard work, and I try to do everything I can to make sure to do that justice. And it's fun. It's fun to watch the community reaction. It's a little nerve-wracking too, because you never know. You're like, I think this stuff is cool. I hope they think it's cool. Did they think it was cool? Oh, they thought it was cool, and then you get to move on. So I had a lot of fun. I was really, we kind of had a little mini half Adepticon party with everyone who's here. All the staff got together, and everyone just smiles because it's always really nice to know that people are digging what you're doing, and to finally have a lot of that information out.
Yeah.
And to answer a lot of the questions that we've really wanted to answer for a long time, but just quite haven't been able to yet. Is really good. It was really good.
I know Alan managed to get into a hall. I went back to my hotel room and just lay on the bed and watch it on my phone.
I'll talk to him tomorrow. It's fine.
I'm so privileged. I was like, you know what? I'll acknowledge that, and I was good. But I could feel the energy in the room through my phone, and it was like it was stuttering and kept freezing up. We could still feel like the excitement.
It was incredible in there. Just the reception, the response, the way in which the Legion community has really kept us accountable, but also stuck with us and continued to I think root for us in a real way has been really wonderful. And hopefully we're doing everything we can to honor that now, and they're seeing the fruits of that patience and that belief going to pay off. And we have so many more cool things for I always get through a roadmap and then I think about the next roadmap and I'm like, but the next one's just going to be even better.
Yeah. Well, so I did make notes. It's not normally like me, but obviously I arrived on. Not obviously, people might not know. I arrived on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Kind of help start getting set up and.
Yeah. You've been doing all the good work in there.
Yeah, I'm doing the X-Wing side of it this year. This is my third year in a row. It's been an honor being able to be a part of the community and everything. But walking through the hall and seeing the setup, can't see. I'll get some pictures and post them later. But
the columns,
it's really impressive setup this year.
Yeah, we took over they took over the whole hall B, and then we got the column wraps. We have the Hilton Skywalk. If you haven't seen that, that's covered in Legion.
Yeah, they made us weave through that one.
Yeah.
Today.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so I mean, Legion's there. This is Legion's year, right? It's everywhere. We went really hard and through the keynote, through everything that we're doing, it's been a blast. We've been demoing the new starter sets to people. It's been awesome.
Is there anything that you've been challenged with the move of Adepticon to Milwaukee?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it definitely. I mean, I think it was definitely more of a challenge. The Hank's team, the Adepticon team, they're amazing, right? Yeah. They do so much in partnership with us to make the events happen. Folks like you come in and you do all the judging and we provide support. So I think, one of the bigger challenges was just the size of the space and the opportunity to really take over things, do the column wraps, do these different kind of visual marketing things that we never had before in the older space. because of the size and the reduced scope. And so it was a lot of learning on both sides. Like, oh, we can do this. Oh, we missed this. Oh, we have to do that. And I think it's just the growing pains of like kind of figuring out the space where we want to go. How can we maximize, the opportunity to show Legion and all of our other games to this wider community of miniatures hobbyists, right? Like, because we have a ton of players playing in all of our events, but like they're just a slice of the con itself. And so this is a big moment to be able to be like, hey, you're not involved yet, but maybe you should be. Maybe you should check out what these people are doing and having fun with.
I suppose that kind of answers my second part of that question of like, are there any particular opportunities you're excited about? Because it's such the space is so much bigger here.
Yeah, well, I mean, so we obviously had the ability to kind of like really increase the amount of capacity we had for our events because we have so much space. And even with the increase, we haven't even come close to touching, the hall that we have, which has been kind of nice from a player perspective because you can move around. Like you're not getting like sardined with anybody. So I think that's been really nice to have the breathing room. But largely, like I think the biggest opportunity that Adepticon has, one, is to bring our communities together, see people from across the globe and everything come play these games, have fun, enjoy, get to communicate, hang out directly with people, get to put faces to like forum handle names and stuff or Discord names. But also, it is a significant marketing opportunity to help the games grow. Because there's miniature players from all different like walks of life who come, getting to see, what we do, how we approach things, how our communities are, like it attracts people, right? When you're walking around and maybe you came from an event and for some reason you didn't have as good of a time as you thought or something, or maybe you did, but you're just like wandering and you're like, what else is cool? And all of a sudden you see these people and they're playing the Star Wars game on the table and it looks awesome and they're having a blast. You're immediately going to be attracted to that and you're going to want to say, oh, what's this about? What's going on there? And so it is a really big opportunity to be able to kind of spread the great message of like Legion and all the other games to players. And see that community grow. And of course, the eyes of the world, so to speak, are kind of on this show as well. And so it's a great way to like, you have people's attention. Let's use it to really better the games.
Talking about a game.
Yeah.
So the Shadow Collector Fox was the thing that kind of dragged me back in. I was joking with people every time I kind of interact with people at cons about Legion specifically. Like, I've sold my Legion collection twice. Luckily, I bought it 3 times.
There you go. So,
but yeah, the Shadow Collector
still one off.
Yeah, was the one that kind of solidified and that ability to play a really tight themed list. So Shadow Collector play, we had that little bit of a lull of releases. Now, you just did the Hondo announcement. About all of the Weekday Raiders, and we've got the symbol on the card already. So I'm pretty excited there. But like, presumably that's going to allow for a different approach to building for Shadow Collector. And like a different archetype. Is there anything you can kind of talk about in that? Give something for a Shadow Collector player?
Yeah, so the Weequay Pirates, they are an option for Shadow Collective. They're a new core option. They obviously have the larger squad size, so you can get them to 10 if you take the officer upgrade with them as well, or 9. And then I think the min unit is 5. Yeah, it's 5 with the heavy.
Yeah,
obviously. So they're pretty interesting. I think they're a pretty interesting addition. I'm curious to see how Shadow Collective players will wind up using them. We had a lot of fun designing the pirates, and Hondo specifically doesn't work for Shadow Collective. The reason being is that Hondo in the canon refused to work with Maul. He was too smart for that, so he avoided that. But we did want the Weekways and the WLO both to be additions to Shadow Collective. They made sense. Like, obviously, there's more pirates than just Hondo's crew, and they're pretty mercenary about everything they do, so they'll work for basically anyone if loot's involved. I think so. It's going to be interesting because the Weekways don't have necessarily the same innate offensive power as maybe the Black Suns, or even the Pikes to some extent in terms of what they bring. But what the Weekways bring is they bring a lot of bodies.
Yeah.
And they have some unique new rules that function like pirates should around loot.
Yeah.
So what we saw is that they're really effective at pushing forward, grabbing objectives, and then when they're around objectives, a couple of their keywords make them more durable. They're also kind of aimed for a melee force, so they can shoot, and they do okay with their blasters, but they do quite well once they're engaged. So they're kind of a strong melee core option. So they complement the close 1-2 range of the Black Suns, and you have your pikes who can kind of do more of the longer range stuff if you want, depending on how you kit them out, right? And then you have the Weequays, which are pretty cost effective for what they do. They're really good at pushing towards objectives. The downside to the Weequays is that they have very low courage, right? Like pirates. So when things are going well, they're happy. But once force starts getting applied to them, they're more likely to kind of like, break ranks and start to not listen and all that good stuff.
So I'm expecting to see lots of raider forces.
I mean, yeah,
We've still got the bus, right? The FA5 and then the swoop bikes and
they do pretty well with the AA5 and like the drop off, but the WLO actually like pairs with them really well. Obviously, we wanted to make sure that kind of their iconic tank had some really good synergies with them. We went through a lot of different iterations with that. Like at one point in the design process, we were like, well, what if we did a combined unit? So you always have to buy the tank and the unit together. And what does that do to the game and how's that work? And those ideas didn't really work out, but that synergy still remains. And then, of course, if you're not interested in adding the pirates at all, you still have the WLO5, which you can bring into your Shadow Collective forces, and you can give it the Black Sun driver, the Pike driver, or whatever, because it has optional parts for the turret driver.
Right.
And so you can customize it. But that speeder tank, I think it's kind of the first light heavy that we've really done. The air speeder for Rebels might be kind of close, but the air speeder has some unique things where like how fast it is and how it kind of flies around. It's like a pseudo flyer. Whereas the WLO is obviously not that nimble, but it is this budget heavy option where, it's not the most durable tank, but it does have a very significant punch. And so it'll be interesting to see how that integrates into like the Shadow Collective plan. Obviously, as a vehicle, it can do some line of sight stuff and things like that. So I'm curious, but our playtesters really enjoyed it. We have a couple of like dedicated Shadow Collective playtesters among the different communities, and they were really thrilled to see it. They gave some really great feedback on how to better integrate the Weequays and the WLO into Shadow Collective if you're not playing Maul, for instance. Right? Because there are those considerations where it's like, well, you can only order within affiliation and those kinds of things. So I'm excited. Once those come out and you get your hands on them, we'll have to have another chat, and you'll have to be like, this is what I think. And we'll be like, all right.
I mean,
let's see where it goes.
I'm normally too shy in telling people what
No, I know. That's what I'm excited about. So hopefully that can, without really getting into like direct card spoilers, which it's a little too early to do. I do think that they bring a new element and a new level, and the way in which they mix with the existing Shadow Collective stuff will provide players a breath of fresh air in terms of their compositions.
I do have one that you might not be able to.
Go for it.
Are we going to be able to do stuff like head swaps onto swoop bikes and kind of do a full weekly theme of heads on the sprues for as modelers? And
I don't know if there's extra heads. I mean, there's at least one, right? Because you have the optional parts for Hondo and everything else. I'm trying to remember what the frame looks like. There are there are a couple of optional builds for the heavies and things like that. So you might get a couple. You might get like one or two. In which case, then with a little bit of hobbying, you could swap out and make the whole like Weequay kind of thing. And then moving forward, right, and not right away, but they're definitely one of those ones, like you mentioned, the Raider Force. I think that there's one where like another kind of mercenary offshoot battle force that could be in the future would be something like that. So they do kind of form a good foundation of that. And we're always looking at things as both in the now and then where it's going forward. And it's the exciting part about a lot of the mercenary things is that they do have this wider range of, someday in the far future, who knows when, it's not inconceivable that the Hutt clan would become a thing. And then you'd have like, the Hutt gangster criminal syndicate and what fits into there that we already have and what do we need to add. And then, like we could do a raider force that's like these things and they're just like pirates coming in, swooping through and taking stuff. And it's all these different things, right?
What I knew would happen talking to you, it always triggers my like, oh, you got this play, get really excited. As soon as you mention like a Hook clan, my mind goes to like a more bounty hunter focus. Having all of those, there's so much cool stuff. And that's the really cool thing about Legion, that you're exploring that world where you have these preconceived notions about how it goes.
Yeah.
Then you guys dropped a bombshell. You ruined one of my questions. Ruined, because I was like, I've got a really good idea for what to talk about. And you announced customizable heroes.
We did.
So I know, as I said, I was watching on my phone. The energy from that announcement was, everyone seemed really excited. It's really well received. Personally, I kind of opens up the space for different kind of game modes. Once you insert yourself into a game, you can kind of lead those campaign forces and have progression. Is there something like that, see in the future of doing like a supplement or maybe an event kit to kind of explore those?
So I think doing narrative like themed campaigns, things like that, definitely something we want to do. Because you were wise enough to ask this question, I'll give you like a spoiler that we haven't talked about anywhere else. And that is that we are currently wrapping work on a campaign system that will likely come out around the time of the starters, which allows players to kind of construct a force and then build it over the course of time. So a little bit like a crusade rule set to kind of give a context to it. And, it's designed so that unlike a lot of campaigns where players have to be involved, there's weeks to it, right? We wanted to create something that was really functionally easy for players to come out of, that kind of thing. So this just kind of allows you to play games with a crew and say, we're going to use this rule set, we're going to follow these kind of guidelines, or you can simply play those rules, in your general pickup game and say, hey, I'm going to be using this rule set. Is that cool in our casual game? And they'll be like, yeah, that's fine, because it's all balanced kind of against everything else. So the idea of being able to grow your force, customize some things, see them like advance and have changes that you can hobby and model onto them. We love all that stuff as hobby gamers. I think in general, it's always the dream to have that. So we do have some of that coming. It's not necessarily the most robust system yet, but I think more of that stuff, it's definitely something we want to go into and explore, because the galaxy's rich, right? It's really rich with stuff.
One of the things I used to always say, that I don't necessarily need a designer to hold my hand to allow me to have fun.
Yeah.
But having those just core mechanics of this is how we'd intend to move it forward. So even just those little pieces will allow communities to grow and thrive, and you can sit back and enjoy, see what people do, and cherry pick pieces.
And much like we talked about with the build your own, customizable commanders, right? That is part of the big magic of wargaming, is the fact that you get to put yourself literally, in the case of your commander, or just artistically into this story that you're telling with your miniatures, with your games, with all this stuff. And I think it's something that inspires a lot of us in the studio. I mean, Dallas, more than anyone, as the lifelong hobbyist and professional painter, like, the man's eyes light up every time he gets the opportunity to do something custom or do something unique. He's actually working on this whole stormtrooper force that he's converting to look like the original Ralph McQuarrie stormtroopers and everything. And so he keeps sending pictures to the chats, and he's like, "Look at this!" And I'm like, "That's crazy, man! That looks so good." And he's just thrilled. So all that stuff to say, like, we do have some stuff that's in the works. It's going to be out hopefully this year, right around the starters. And I mean, more plans to go forward with all that stuff. Provide frameworks. One of my favorite books of all time was the General's Handbook, the original one that they did. And it's kind of what you're talking about, right? It wasn't really a how-to. It was just here's some general guidelines of like what we think and how this should work and those kinds of things.
It kind of gives you permission.
Through, that's a classic phrase. We always say that, gamers always want permission. They need permission. Because as a developer, a lot of the times you're like, well, of course you can do whatever you want. It's your game. Like once you're playing it on your tables.
You mean you don't send the AMG?
We don't.
All of that are wasted.
There's certainly like expectations and societal things when you come here, right? Everyone expects that you're going to play by the core rules. But if you're playing with your buddies at your table and you're like, we want to do a campaign and we want to do this crazy stuff, it's like, you don't need the permission to do it. It's your world. It's your game. Like, go crazy. But permission does help. And it's some guidance too, right?
Yeah, and it just helps everyone having that baseline to work from, and then as you start playing with your friends, you can evolve it the direction you kind of want to. I know, like, creators of miniatures gamers, so you get into the arms race, and doing a campaign system like that can just go in it, take the same concept in a different direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very happy. Great.
Excellent.
I could end it now.
There we go.
But I won't.
But we got more. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we said, Alan isn't here. He did have a question
Okay.
I wanted to ask, so I'll have to steal his thunder. This is tough. I'll give him some softballs.
All right. Yeah. It's time for the games to begin.
Yeah. So after April 15th, what will be the mandatory purchases for veteran players who want to attend high-tier events like Adepticon moving forwards? So is there like something that I have to buy to compete at Worlds?
What will you have to buy to compete at Worlds? I mean, nothing, as long as you want to print and play.
Yeah. So, like, all of us, the components and everything that are on the print and play website at the moment are still going to be available, and we can. As long as we're happy to do that.
So I mean, like, all of the battle cards that you would need, which are already available as print and play, will remain as print and play. They remain viable. Print and play is print and play from the official print and play documents is an official component. So it covers all of the statements in the documents that say you have to have I forget what it's called. I think it's official. I think it says you have to have the official card component. A print and play counts for that, right? Okay. If it's from us. So you don't really need to have to make any purchase if you're a veteran player. Because you have your tokens, right? You have your aims, your dodges, you have your order tokens already. You likely would have to come up with a 3-inch or a 1/2-inch range tool, the 3-incher.
Yeah.
But players have already done that from various ways. So, like, I'm kind of going through the list and I'm being like, am I missing anything? You already have your dice, right? That's another core component that you would have to have. You have to have your POI tokens, but those are available as print and play, or you can have your TO approved options.
Yeah.
So yeah, realistically, like, you don't have to do anything. I was quite genuine during the keynote when I said on April 15th, everyone in that room and across, the Legion community will literally have the entire game in their hands in those documents.
Yeah.
To be able to play and it's going to be all the updated cards in the new formats, so you're not going to have to be like old format, new format. The few rebalances that remain will be in there as well, but that stuff will be there and it's going to stay there and it's going to stay legal and legitimate.
Yeah. Well, I'll kind of riff off Alan's question a little bit then. I know on one of the previous podcasts where we had the information from Gamma, and I was kind of trying to put it into consumer speak rather than the store side of it. Obviously, you'd spoken about the temporary SKUs that you guys could have for the faction card pack.
Yep.
I was pretty adamant that there's a potential for retailers to kind of under order on those ones. It's going to be a very difficult one. I remember from the keynote you mentioned that for a full collection, I might want to buy 2. If I'm maxed out on my Stormtroopers, I'll need to get 2 of those. So are we kind of in that position where one's enough, but if you like having the official card and really, it's got to be all laid out in your binder pages people use, you need like 2 of each.
Yes. Need. So the card packs, I mean, they were probably the biggest challenge just internally to try to figure out how do we don't want people to feel burdened by having to pick up transitional card packs, right? To have to purchase these things. But we know that players, we know, because we got told very loudly, and I read all the comments, I do.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's very useful. But obviously when we said, here are the print and play documents, there was an overwhelming swell, but why can't we have them in physical print now? We want them now. We want physical print. Just let us get the cards. And so we know that they're going to be a high value item for a lot of players out there. And so our big thing was like, looking back at the past of some of the transitional packs that have come through Asmodee and some of the other games, and trying to learn lessons of like, okay, what worked well, what didn't. And then us internally, we've worked at other companies that have done similar things. So how do we take the lessons that we've learned and try to apply them to make the card pack, transition thing as value laden and painless as possible for players.
Yeah.
While still knowing that yes, these are things that have to be manufactured. They are going to have a cost associated with them. You are going to have to buy cards if you want them. So the first choice was to say print and play, right? We just took out the entire requirement that you had to get physical cards in general.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was step one. And then step two was we started talking about and looking at and running different permutations on product types and what amounts. So it was like, okay, well, what if we did a pack that just literally had everything?
Yeah.
And then we said that would be a very big pack. And this is how much it would cost. And we said most players won't like that because that's really expensive. And the vast majority of players are going to have a lot of card waste. And so from there, we said, okay, what happens if we do this? And we take out these cards and we make them a pack and we make this a pack. And we just kept doing that until we wound up at a point to where everyone internally felt very good about, or like it's not a perfect solution, but it's a pretty good solution. And so what we wound up doing was we have the command card pack, which has all of your commanders and operatives and your command cards. So all of the things that, you only really need one of.
Yeah.
And then we did the unit card packs. And so that's all of your units that you need multiples of. And we basically just split the allocation in half. So for core, 6 cores, your max. So a unit card pack is going to come with enough cards for 3 of those units.
Right.
And it's going to have all of their unit specific upgrades. So if a unit has like a specific upgrade, things like that, you're going to be able to get 3 of those, or like half, right? And then since unfortunately, most of the other slots are 3s, right? Like your special forces, your supports.
Yeah.
We just round it up.
Yeah.
So you get 2 of those. And the idea
Blizzard Force players will be happy.
Yeah. And the idea being that and I think something that we haven't said that's important to note is that the faction unit card packs also come with the mercenaries that work for the faction.
Oh, cool.
So you do not have to get the additional mercenary pack.
Right.
Now, you as a Shadow Collective player, you'll want to get that one because it'll have all your cards in it.
I'm going to get all of them anyway.
But
It's it'll be interesting. I need to hunt down a store in the UK where I can kind of get all my pre-orders.
Right.
So I used to just be able to oh look, these have arrived now. I'll put them on hold myself.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, so the goal being that like we're able to kind of offer a bit of a modular system where we believe that most players will get the command card pack and 1 unit card pack, and then they will supplement the rest however they need to, whether that's through print and players or whatever. And then if you do want all of it, you have the ability to do that. You just have to pick up the extra unit card pack. You will have some extras, but you can do with those as you will. Trying to get the best of the abilities. And then, of course, it was all about controlling costs and then looking at the overall aggregate of what a player has to spend on, reacquiring all these physical cards. And did that compare favorably or better with what other edition transitions have asked players to do, right? And we said, okay, obviously we're moving into this new system and this new Legion. There's going to be a cost to that transition.
If you say it,
that's okay. I've said it like 3 times now. So we're moving in, like we are doing this edition shift at this point. There's always going to be a cost associated to updating your rules if you want to do it.
Yeah.
And so we tried to always pay attention to like, okay, this is what other people have done. This is what people seem to think is fair. How close can we do, or how much better can we do than that? And so it always remained in a thing. And yes, if you own all of the factions and you want all the card packs, you gotta get all of the card packs if that's what you want to do. But my fallback always goes to, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to be as good as possible to people and to give everyone as much flexibility and options to be able to engage with that product the way they need to or want to.
Yeah. I know I tried to thin out my collection before I moved, knowing there was new stuff coming, and still found it really difficult. So I'll be getting all of them and that kind of thing. And I'm looking forward to that conundrum of like which army and stuff to do next. I finished my Wookiee battle.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Defenders. They're all done. That's kind of its own unique block.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Shadow Collective. I went for gas acting the Mandos and doing all that, and like my Maul. one of the things that I've always found interesting, and this applies across all of the games that you do, so even MCP, I would suppose. The choice that you have to make from a design standpoint of, I think like an example for region players would be like the Pike unit. Obviously, they were picked to the Clone Wars design, and then you have the Book of Boba Fett Pike. With Shatterpoint, it's you get to kind of jump around.
Yeah.
Obviously, MCP, you get to do as many.
It's Marvel's the Wild West, really. Yeah.
For MCP, but how with a game like Legion, how do you kind of decide where that aesthetic line's gonna get drawn?
So the guiding principle for Legion is that we always look at it through a real world lens, right? So live action lens.
Yeah.
Now that does get tricky at times because things like Pike Syndicate, when those miniatures were concepted and created, the only official reference was animated.
Yeah.
The Bad Batch is another great example of a unit that we did where it was like the only reference was animation.
Yeah.
And yet, when you look at that great art piece that Preston Art directed with them with their helmets off, they're all Tamira Morrison likeness, but sort of exaggerated to make Wrecker look like Wrecker, right? Yeah. So they have their, the Crosshair's got more of a gaunt face, and Hunter's got the tattoo and the square face and these kinds of things. And those are interesting challenges to try to do. And sometimes there's a needle at which you can push the designs and the stylization that LFL is okay with, and sometimes they're like, you need to dial it back. Like a character like Ahsoka, there's really no, like when we did Padawan and the Padawan Ahsokas, it was like your reference is the animation, your reference is the animation, right? Like that is what Ahsoka looks like in this age. And so there really wasn't any true amount of like real world likeness. We just simply said, okay, this is this, and this is how we would do the proportions in Legion, but the likeness is the likeness is the likeness.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of comes down like, I know folks have often asked about the clone commandos, and they're like, why did they, they're very animation designed versus like some of the Battlefront 2 designs that had them where Battlefront has its own unique aesthetic that does push more towards the realism side.
Yeah.
And the reality there is like the reference that we have to work with comes from the Bad Batch, because at the time we were working on them, that was like being done. And so it's like, this is the look, this is the design that they are. And so then it's our job to just kind of like interpret that through the Legion lens and find those places where things work. But for the most part, we're always going to look to live action first if it exists. And then if it doesn't exist, we'll go to the whatever reference it is, typically animated reference, and we'll say, okay, how do we reinterpret this through a Legion lens?
Yeah.
And bring that into the thing. And sometimes we will blend some of the styles, like the new Anakin miniature, obviously. He's not Hayden Christensen necessarily. He's a blend of the animation look and Hayden Christensen to create this kind of unique Legion style, the Anakin from the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And that was done, for a couple different reasons. One, because there are two different style guides for Anakin based on his timeline and like, those things. And so you have to kind of work through those and you compromise on those. And also because, we really wanted, because of the way Ahsoka kind of turned out, one of, the Dallas's vision was like, he's like, when players play Clone Wars and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and Anakin, it needs to look right? You need to have that click. And well, the original Anakin, that's very much based on the episode 3 Anakin, like is a solid Anakin. It looks like Anakin. It looks like, the likeness. When you put him next to Ahsoka, it doesn't quite tell the story. And again, for Dallas, that's something that he's constantly thinking about as a hobbyist and modeler. So he brought that to the fore, and I was like, yeah, let's, we have to do Captain Rex anyway. So we're already committed to doing this tool to make, this character pack, and we need to have more than Captain Rex. Because from a production standpoint, doing a single character, it doesn't make a lot of financial sense because of all the costs involved and everything else. So we need more characters to put into it. We had Fives and Echo. And Anakin was an easy include to that, so we got a new sculpt of Anakin in there.
Yeah, and I've talking about the dyes and the tooling and all of that. Obviously we discussed that was one of the things where me and Alan were really happy about. We did a good job and felt like it's a good episode.
No, you had a great conversation on a lot of that stuff and some of the things that we deal with day in and day out in terms of manufacturing, production, logistics, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. As I would assume, so if you can jump in and tell everyone where I'm wrong here. It's always my favorite part of the show when people tell me I'm wrong. Obviously, you're doing the multiple carrots in the pack, and it's obviously the way that the cast and sprues all go together. It just makes better sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I buy a core set, I'm gonna have 2 Lukes, but it doesn't really matter. Like, it financially, I'm gonna still be better off having more of those models.
Right.
Through. As counter logic as that might seem, if you're not familiar with how the process goes.
Yeah, well, so one of the things with like including the starter characters or commanders in these like wider boxes, right? We wanted to not repeat kind of the problem that was with them in the first starters, which was they weren't available separately.
Yeah.
And especially because, you can kind of argue like, well, but when that happened with Legion, like everyone was new, right? Everyone was starting with the starter because that's what you did. But now that we have an existing community and it's very robust and we're trying to bring a new community, you go, okay, well, we don't want to lock things that players like you or I would want behind a starter.
Yeah.
Because we don't want you to feel compelled that you have to buy the starter to get the new version of Luke. So we looked for opportunities to put those characters in other packs. And like I mentioned at the keynote, if there's, if you want the new Grievous, if you want the new Obi-Wan, you want the new Luke, you want the new Vader, you are not required to get them through the starter. They will be available in other packs. But for, the cost perspective and data analysis and all that to make sure the value is good, they do wind up with other characters. So there's a trade-off, right? And it's always from our standpoint, we're always evaluating how do we get the best value at all levels of the chain. How do we make sure that you as the player feel value in what you're getting off the shelf? How does the retail feel value in terms of stocking the product and carrying the product? How does the distributor feel value in terms of like being able to sell the product or store the product? And how do we see value in terms of being able to stay in business?
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of things that go in. The one, I guess, the statement to make, which I believe you guys did make sort of in your analysis of hard plastic and how the stuff works. By and large, like when you feel like you're paying for something that you don't want, and you're like, if they just cut this out, it would be cheaper. The reality is that it might be more expensive.
Yeah.
And a great example of that is just looking at how the single character packs for Legion and how their MSRP has risen over time. And it's because of the Costco effect, right?
Yeah.
Things in bulk are cheaper because there's less touches to them.
I'm going to do it because you've already touched it.
Yeah, do it.
Apologies in advance. But it's the old pricing of a Space Marine captain compared to a Tactile squad.
Yep.
People pay $50 or whatever it is nowadays for a Space Marine because we buy one.
Yep.
So it is deliberately priced at a point where it doesn't make sense by a weight of plastic.
Yeah.
But the reason behind cutting that die was that it needs to sell X amount of units to reduce those costs.
There's like that single purchase, repeated purchase, right? You're evaluating that because obviously hard plastic and steel tools, they make most of their margin in repeat like shots, right? Yeah. They're a quantity type of production. So you're looking at that. There's also just like the idea that if you have 4 different characters and there are 4 different boxes, that's 4 different production runs.
Yeah.
Right. So you're paying the factory worker to do 4 jobs. Whereas if you put those 4 together, you're paying that factory worker to do 1 job.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's all at the same time. And so
it's one skid of one.
Yeah. And it's 1 box instead of 4 boxes. Like, there's a ton of value savings that come from doing larger packs that way. And then, we're able to pass that value savings on all the way through the chain.
Yeah. It was one of the things that was pretty exciting that you touched on, obviously. You're doing the same kind of thing with the the combining of the boxes from the starter sets, that especially like the splash release kind of one.
Yep.
It lets you pass that value on for MCP. You mentioned obviously a really competitive price point that you're launching the Legion starters.
Yep.
I feel like to me anyway, it's a twofold win in that you move into what I feel like is a modern miniatures game. You split away from that 2-player starter set. I feel like the way purchasing habits of people today, they know they want to play a game. They want more of their army for the book rather than, I've got 2 small armies.
Right.
I can pick which one I like, and maybe I'll have a friend.
Yeah.
Going in that direction, especially in this modern world where I'm a dinosaur. I love having a rule book to kind of thumb through. I get the Legion rule reference printed. I just like having a physical thing, but I'm wrong. It's okay.
I think like it goes back to physical cards, right? Like you don't get into miniatures because you don't like tactile things, right? It's a tactile game. It's a tactile experience. The old CEO of GW used to make this claim that there's a gene in people that determines whether or not you will engage with miniatures products because you're just genetically coded to be fascinated with these things, and that's why they'll never run out of players.
Yeah.
And I do think there's some truth to that, right? Like there's a joy in handling real things in a digital world, in a place where things aren't real, right? They're in the cloud. Like these things are not in the cloud, and so having a real rule book meant I fell out of reading. We're getting off topic, but
okay.
I fell out of reading for like several years when my wife got a Kindle, and she was like, "Oh, great, we never have to have books again." And she's like, "You just put it on here." And I tried, and I just was like, I could do anything else. And then all of a sudden, like not so long ago, through Black Friday sales, I picked up a bunch of Halo books, like this little collection, this bundle, and I was through those books in like a week.
Yeah.
And
My wife
it's a huge thing.
Very close to forcing me to get a divorce. No, when we the collective Star Wars universe, when we reset the canon, I have every hard copy.
Oh man,
Star Wars book from that point forward. And I'm like everyone. I started with these Timothy Zahn books.
Yep.
That's where I don't think I was even a teenager, and I started at Dark Forces, which is the second one.
Yeah.
And if I didn't know,
You didn't know. It just looked cool. Yeah.
And I ship them all back, and as soon as I get home, we're going to go on an IKEA day and buy some more characters and roll these books on. But yeah, like that.
There's something to it, right? I mean, it is a thing, and it's what brings you back to that painting table. It's what brings you back to the hobby table. It's what makes miniatures games such an incredible experience because everything is 3-dimensional. It's all, and that's tabletop in general, but especially with like our style of games and the way in which they work, it is a thing. So I 100% get it, right? I think people always like to be like, oh, I'm weird, and I'm like, is that weird, or is like living in a digital age where nothing's real weird? And I think that's what's weird, right?
Unless it's all in way.
Yeah, it's all of it.
So I'm respectful of you.
Yeah, no. Let's get through it.
So I have a lighter question to end with. It's not a softball, but it's a lighter.
Okay.
So in the roadmap, you mentioned that some of the products have been sat around on people's desks for quite a while. Just waiting for that time where you can move forward with them. Can you share a bit more about those logistical shifts that allowed you to kind of push those things forward? And did any of those products that have been sat around for a while get any just weird nicknames from you guys internally?
The biggest one was the Weekways, primarily because we intended to release those in the old version of the game. And we foolishly thought, we were like, we came in and we're like, let's try a big unit. Like let's make the Weekways numerous. And it was something that we've talked about a lot. It was a push we really wanted to make. We wanted to expand the scope of the game. We wanted to see bigger units, kind of give it more of that army feel that it needed and we wanted to put into it and everything. And so we just kind of like dove head first into it. And we're like, no, it'll work. It'll be fine. And we quickly found out that, through the cover system mechanics, through how dice pools work, like no matter how we really worked the rules and the dice and everything else, they just always were overwhelming because the full unit of them could effectively delete most units, or deal significant enough damage to make the unit's counter like strike really negligible, just based on how the dice pools work and everything. And so, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, the path it took for us to get there was like not quite fast enough for the manufacturing portion to be done. So we actually had, we had the frames lying around. By that time, we were like, okay, we'll just pause. We'll have to wait on this, and we'll come back later. And because there was such a big delay between them, I think they kind of just became the fish shake weekways. Because every time the project came back up, we'd have to go back to like old notes, or we'd have to get Dallas to pull the frames out because no one could remember. It'd be like, remind me like what was in that unit, and like how many of them were there, and where did we wind up, and all this stuff.
Some idiot would come and ask if there's extra heads on.
That's right, extra heads in the frame. It'd be like, I don't know how many heads are in the frame. So yeah, and it was the WLO was the same one, but we didn't want to release the WLO without the weekways.
Makes sense.
So both of those were effectively done for a couple of years. Like we just had to actually ship. We needed to do the packaging and stuff, but from a miniature standpoint, they were done, and they just kind of sat there. There's some other things that are in works and in plans that kind of sit for a little bit. A lot of that is development stuff. So like battle forces, there's the Genosian battle force, which I foolishly mentioned when we revealed Genosians at one point, because it was in the works, and then we got to a point and we were like, oh, we're not quite ready to do this. Let's hold on it so that we can make it better, but that means that it goes to the future. So now everyone's like, and again, I've opened Pandora's box with that. So they'll be like, it's coming, and it is coming, but it's not coming as fast as maybe we originally thought. And so that's one of those dynamic things where like there are always projects, and sometimes you get to a point on a project and you say, okay, we're looking at this force and we don't believe that we have quite enough things to make it work. So let's put it to the side. Let's schedule those, or we know they're coming later and we'll wait. And then you replace those with other things, and things kind of shift and go. And so at any point, there's a folder of like on the shelf things and other things you're doing. None of them really get too many nicknames. The Weequay one probably isn't appropriate for a PG related show, honestly, but they definitely got.
We get one pro.
They got pretty spicy. Those damn Weekways, I think that became their name. It was just like, oh, every time they got us every time, like all the way through the process. It was wild. So that is one of the dangers of like sitting on stuff like that. But they were kind of unique in the fact that it came out really fast. There are a couple other things like big units in general, right? That was one where we had a lot of discussions about it, and then the Weekways kind of proved that, oh, we're not there yet. We need to start thinking about that. But that was good. That was good information as we were working through, like, okay, well, what changes, what adjustments do we want to make to the game to let it grow for the next like several years, and be able to take the product in a way that we thought was exciting and that players would really like, and all those things, right? Because, despite how you feel about the changes, the intention behind every change is to improve the game, right? Is to make the game better, to make the game more enjoyable for more people, to open the game space and the design space up so that we can make cooler things that maybe we can't make currently because of some limitation on the game that currently exists, like big units, right? Old cover just didn't allow it. New cover rules do allow it. And they have other benefits too, like smaller dice pools can be more effective, which means that not every character has to have the same suite of like universal rules in order to have their small dice pool be effective and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of that stuff, and then you just kind of like you flow through stuff and you do things, and then you have a discussion about customizable characters and what can we do in hard plastic, and so we get this big list of all these different parts that Dallas and his team concepts, and those go to dev, and we were like, oh, this is really awesome. We can't work on it yet, but we'll work on it soon. And you build those in. It's a wild, dynamic environment, and being flexible and adaptive and willing to kind of work within the bounds of the timelines to react to things as best you can is one of those parts that just happens.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're getting towards the close now. I need to get you back in at 8 minutes time. But I know I was chatting with Plumber when you guys spoiled the Deploy the Garrison box.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, we're gonna have to get Michael on to a podcast. We'll just do a Shatterpoint episode and it'll be fine. But obviously you've got Krennic coming in the new Imperial box.
Yep.
So you give us anything for Krennic and
Krennic?
and if not, if you can't go too deep into Krennic, which is your favorite Krennic lines, I was out on. So
well,
we normally close on Are You Blind, but I'll let you pick it.
Oh, I see. So the Krennic in the Imperial High Command pack is just, I mean, it's just a hard plastic resculpt. So he doesn't necessarily have any new rules in that pack.
It's a nice model
that changes. Yeah, he's doing the greatness. That was our big thing. We were like, we have to do the meme. We were this close to greatness. And then we started doing it, and we realized it was really hard to not make him look Italian, because like that's a very, he'd be like, let me tell you, boy. But we got there. It was really exciting and fun. No, but yeah, like you have all the Krennic secrets. They're already there.
That's enough.
There's no big rebalance or anything like that.
No like extra stories or anything. Just the.
I mean,
not trying to be too Italian.
Yeah, no, it was the not trying to be too Italian with that. Really, like we obviously, when we were doing the rebalance stuff, we had a lot of discussions about his command cards. Like, Annihilation Looms was a big one, and like, how does that affect things? What his role was in the overall army and how he played was a big one. And I think our lead developer, Andrew Gersom, did a really good job trying to define that and like, kind of figure out how he could fit within this pantheon of different Empire characters. But yeah, no, I like, there's no big secrets on him.
Yeah, that's good. And then, we'll kind of close it there. And I think close to greatness is a good.
Very close to greatness.
Yeah. You did open up like 15 other questions in the last 10 minutes, so I definitely need to take notes.
That's fair.
But, thank you very much.
This won't be the last. We'll try to we'll bring someone else on, like someone from the developers, the next time we chat.
Yeah.
And then you can hit them with the really hard questions, and I'll just sit back and be like, don't say anything wrong.
I won't be able to shield them from Alan next time.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. See, we'll do 2-on-2. We'll do 2-on-2. Like a good game of basketball.
Okay, well, thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks so much for all the work that you and Alan do. I love listening to the cast.
It's been really fun.
It's been really fun. I know you've had a big move and all this stuff, but yet you're I can see the passion and everything else. So we just appreciate it.
Oh, it's easy when it's this much fun, right?